It's the Let's Talk Polyamory podcast, where we talk about all things consensual non-monogamy, polyamory, open relationships, swinging, and how you can have secure and sexy relationships, no matter how you do them. Now here's your hosts, Tara and Andre.
So thanks for joining us. We do live trainings and talk about how you can have amazing open polyamorous relationships like ours.
Yeah.
So you can feel more secure and connected and satisfied.
You know, as you say polyamorous, I think back to a couple that we saw on the weekend, friends of ours, and how they are really adamant about proclaiming that they're not polyamorous. They
Yes.
are in an open relationship, ethical about it, but I think they define themselves more as swingers or being open, but they really say that they're not polyamorous because they're emotionally in a closed system, right? So they have friends and they feel deeply about their friends, and they tell their friends that they love them, and their friends tell them that they love them as well.
Exactly.
But they don't consider themselves to be polyamorous. It's not as though they're having a love affair with these people. They're simply interacting with these people in a deep and profound emotional level, but not self-described as polyamorous.
Exactly. Yeah, I think when we say polyamorous or open, we're being more general, because it was actually interesting. One of my clients, they talked about it. They said how everything we talk about actually relates to any relationship.
Sure.
So even though it specializes in the area of non-monogamy, all these things can apply whether you're already in a non-monogamous relationship or not.
Yeah, sure. Anywhere on the spectrum.
Yeah. So quick introduction, if you don't know us already, I'm Tara Lynn Franco. I'm a relationship and awesomeness coach.
You are. And I'm Andre Turcotte. I'm a sex-positive psychotherapist.
So today's topic is how to start in polyamory and not totally suck at it. So,
although there's nothing wrong with the good suck, right?
That's
Sucking
true.
sometimes
That's true.
Is a good thing.
That's true. When we were creating the title and using the term suck, it was like we're sort of using it in jest, because I think sometimes people feel like they're sucking at it. I mean, I've felt like it.
But you know, to that point, it's interesting, because what do we mean by sucking at it, right? So how can we qualify or quantify it? There's a criteria that would say, yes, you've crossed over that threshold and now you officially suck. So it's, I guess it's more of the feeling, right, that we come up with, and we're just feeling not so wonderful about it. I feel like I suck at it.
Yeah. It's sort of like, you know, you're creating your own sort of drama around it, and then you might cause yourself to say that you suck at it. So today, stay to the end, because we have a special offer.
Do we really need a new toast room? Maybe not, but we need this program, because we can take us from all of this suffering and discomfort, feeling like we suck, into feeling as though we are actually pretty good at who we are and doing what we do.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna invest in something this week, I would say invest in something that supports you, whether it's with us or something else, like something that continues to benefit you. So
the gift that keeps giving, but not like an STI. This one is good giving. Well, you're giving yourself the release from jealousy, or your partner and yourself the release from jealousy, from insecurities, from better communication, how to relate more effectively, how to get more of what you want to.
Yeah, so before we totally jump in, I think we already jumped in, but we want to know from you, are there things that you feel that you suck at in your relationships?
I just thought about it. If you come back thinking, no, I don't suck at anything, I'm great, there might be something to look at there as well, right?
That's true. That's true. That's true.
So it's good to have that awareness. But also, to that point, how do I know if I'm sucking? How do we know if we suck in the relationship? Do we have that ability to be so insightful? Or do we invite feedback from other people? Can we ask them for exit interviews? How do we know if we're sucking?
Well, that's a good point, actually, because some people, I do talk to a lot of people in the private chats, but I hear a lot of things from different people, and a lot of it is around breakups, and that's often why they join the group, is because they've broken up. And like you said, like, I don't know if we often get the chance to have that exit interview, like where did it go wrong? What was my role in it? And I think we have a tendency to think that we're the ones that suck, or we're the ones that did something wrong.
But wouldn't it be so helpful if we really did get candid, constructive criticism in that? You know, in the beginning, when we're first starting to engage each other and we're, kind of flirting with each other, we might be able to feel rather comfortable in saying a lot of things and expressing what we're wanting and not wanting. But when it gets to the point of our saying, okay, well, it's not working, we're going to go our own ways, are we as comfortable in really announcing what our preferences were, what we wanted more of or less of, and how can we use that information going forward, right? So are there repetitions or patterns that we might be able to look at and say, well, you know what? I noticed in my 3 other previous relationships that this thing keeps coming up. This jealousy keeps finding its way into my relationships. Is it the people that I'm picking, or is it me, or is it a combination of the two? And very often, like many other things, it is multi-causal, right? So we'll look at those things.
Yeah, exactly. I was talking to someone last week and they were saying, like, why do I keep getting in these relationships, this repetition of people that aren't good people or that, you know, don't fit my needs? And so it's an interesting question. So,
well, I like to look at my part of it, because then I can really try to control that part. But when I look at the other person's part in it, there's probably very little that I can do, and it's only my perspective towards it. So I can look at it as though it's the outside with all of those components that are affecting me, or how am I going to be affected or be more effective in the world.
Okay.
Well,
so where do you feel there's certain areas right now that you feel you're stuck at?
I think they're continuous. I think I still have issue with intimate attachments, even though I can physically demonstrate them. Emotionally, I find myself wanting to connect with people, and then at the same time still wanting to pull back from them. I have an awareness that allows me to override that. I have found effective ways of allowing it, but the knee-jerk reaction, the initial part, the intimacy, sometimes still brings me back a little bit.
Yeah.
But the awareness helps.
Yeah, I think that not being enough is something for me too. And I think part of that triggers some feelings of jealousy sometimes. I feel sometimes as well, like, and I think this is also something I've heard a lot from people, is that because during COVID we were less, you know, active dating people and going to events and stuff like that, I feel like I'm a little bit out of practice. Yeah, and this weekend even I felt guilty because I was planning a date, which seems crazy because we've been doing this for like 5 years. So, you know, I think it was great because we had an opportunity to talk a bit about it, and I was layering on a whole bunch of meaning that I think wasn't there.
So you were feeling guilty about planning the date?
Planning the date and having the date. Yeah, because I was feeling, you know, people saw our video that we did Saturday. I was just having a lot of feels and just not feeling good. I was having the boo-hoos, as I called. And then, you know, in the meantime, I was trying to plan something. So you got the part of me that was having the boo-hoos and I need to be your secure base, right, and safe haven, but yet I was planning a date with somebody else. So then I was feeling guilty about doing that. Like it was unfair.
So I get all the negative so-called crappy side of you, and then you're going to go out and have fun and present with this other person. But
that's how I felt that you were feeling. But I don't think you were necessarily feeling that way. I was feeling that way.
Well, wouldn't it be understandable that if we had something going on between us, or that you felt safe enough to have me as your safe haven, that we could unload these things, that we could be present with these feelings? But isn't it understandable that we should want to go to another free of all those transference, all those considerations, that I could just go and have a good time? I don't see why we wouldn't want that.
No, exactly. But I still had a bit of guilty feelings.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that we simply turn away from difficult situations or run to another person as just our fantasy, but it could be also one of the benefits of being open and having other people outside, that we can go to them and have these other experiences and then come back and have that other situation.
Yeah, well, I think this sometimes happens when people are married or nesting with someone with kids and stuff like that, because your home may feel like you have a certain identity and obligations associated with it. And when you go outside of that, maybe it's not the same. You can be a different person and that sort of thing. Yeah. So the thing that I'm wanting to work on this week is being more present and alive and with you, and coming to you and you. So that's my goal this week. And we're going to talk a bit about that today.
What a wonderful idea of setting goals for ourselves for a week. Interesting. It seems as though a week would be a good amount of time to be effective. Not too long that it seems, well, you know, this is going to be my lifelong challenge, and not so short that it's just a passing thought. I like that. Maybe what's my goal for the week?
Yeah. So what's your goal for the week? Maybe you have one that this is inspired. So,
yeah, good to hear.
So if you're wanting to start an open relationship, or if you've already started and have gotten into it and maybe, you know, having some feels, what are some things that we can do? So here's how to start.
Okay.
So
maybe we start with determining what our motive is, right?
Yeah.
So the question of why, what is bringing me to this consideration? What's going on? So is it simply that I'm wanting to escape a sticky situation? I'm kind of bored with my partner, whatever. It's valid, but maybe not the most fantastic of reasons. But there are other reasons why people get into it as well.
Yeah,
right?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, after you.
Yeah, what do you hope to gain from it? But I think it's interesting what you talked about in terms of like if you're trying to fix something in your relationship. So if this is the reason why you're going to non-monogamy, I would suggest, highly recommend, that it's something that you work through first, because I think what might happen and what we've seen happen, and that's why people often see us, is that they go to it to escape or to fix something, and then it just exaggerates the issue.
Yeah.
And especially if you don't do the number 5 thing that we're going to talk about, it can cause even more problems.
Yeah, it's like it's a magnifier, right? So if your relationship is good, it can make it even better because there's a lot of great things about it. Exactly. And if there are an issue with it, it can actually really bring that to the forefront and make it even more uncomfortable. So yeah, look at what your motive is in wanting to open this up. Be honest with yourself and your partner.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what are your wants, needs, and desires? And I think the other thing that's important to consider is sometimes when we get this idea in our mind that we want to open up, we're thinking about all the experiences we might have and how awesome it might be for us. Right. Like, can we also imagine our partner having other partners? Right. And, you know,
and when we do imagine it, is it one of compersion or one of jealousy? Right. Yeah. So I'll speak to my own personal experience. At first, I thought about my fantasy and how wonderful it would be to do all these things. And it was all of that and more. It was fantastic, beyond my expectations. But that was very egocentric. I was looking at my own part. And then we were at a party one time, and I think I first heard you and then saw you interacting with somebody else. And I was not prepared for how strong of a reaction I would have towards that. And it kind of took me back a bit. Luckily for me, you were very in tune with where I was at, and you came to check in with me and find out, what was going on with me. I'm very fortunate to have such a caring partner, but it's not always the case. Yeah. So we have to look a little bit into the future and imagine what it would be like on the other side of that as well. It serves us well to have this consideration.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Which brings us to number 2, which is building security in self. Yes. So some introspection on what kinds of scenarios might come up and where you feel comfortable, like, where you might be comfortable, uncomfortable.
Yeah. I think there's a direct correlation between the level of jealousy and my feelings of self-esteem. So,
really?
Yeah, I know. It sounds rather obvious to you, but yes, until you speak of it or have that awareness, it might not necessarily be in your awareness on a conscious level. That's true. So when I feel better about myself, when my self-esteem is higher, I feel less affected by jealousy because I am able to say, well, they're doing that, but I'm still okay. And when I feel less secure about myself, then I'm more prone to the pitfalls of jealousy. So it seems as though it's rather obvious, but what do we do with that information? Well, I can take measures, I can take actions to increase my level of self-esteem, and I can address my issues of insecurity and jealousy.
And how do you do that, Andre?
Well, by working with someone like yourself.
Or you, or us.
Or in our program. Yeah, we will show you in a very concrete and easily manageable way how we're going to increase levels of self-esteem, how we're going to decrease the effects of jealousy.
Yeah, exactly.
And not to say that we'll never feel jealous, but when it does come up, we'll have a better approach to dealing with it. How are we going to be affected by it or less affected by it?
Yeah, I like the idea where, I think people who say they can be 100% not jealous is a bit of a fallacy. I think we always have, maybe, but I think, knowing how to deal with it and decreasing your recovery time is awesome. And the other thing I wanted to say too, and I say this to lots of people, is people often feel like they suck at non-monogamy because they can't have 100% compersion. And I think that's a bit of a myth. I don't think you have to have 100% compersion. You could be neutral, work towards neutral or be able to recover and have those tools, like you said, to, build yourself and security in self and be comfortable with it.
Yeah, maybe compersion is kind of parallel to having an orgasm. It shouldn't be the end run. And if we don't have it, doesn't mean that we are in any way deficient. Right? We should just enjoy the process along the way. But it's interesting, the idea of sucking at non-monogamy. Looking back, in many ways, I really sucked at monogamy. Many of my relationships failed miserably. I had to cheat, lie, or steal my way into other forms of it. I mean, I would not give myself a passing grade. This relationship, however, even with all the bumps in the road, even with things going south on occasion, I would give myself very high marks for being present, for being honest, for being open, for communicating. And that's much different than the road traveled before.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
so
that's good.
So some questions you want to ask yourself is, how have I been if you're starting? How have I been in previous partnerships? Are there patterns like you talked about early?
Patterns and repetitions, yeah, because that data will inform us as to where we are and where are we going to go. Are we simply going to go into another relationship thinking it's going to be different and yet maintain those similar repetitions and patterns?
Yeah, and I think that's important to know, because this is often, people will jump in and then they have to backtrack and do the work after they've already begun. So
and then they're entangled with other people's emotions, thoughts, and considerations as well. So it makes it even that much more difficult. Not impossible, but there's more variables in the mix.
Yeah.
As opposed to looking at it individually and then going forward.
Yeah, and I think some of the things people experience, you've probably experienced it, I would love to know if people have had this, is where you might have been in a relationship with someone that maybe had another partner, and then all of a sudden they pulled the brakes on it, and then it's all of a sudden like, well, we're taking a break, and now you are experiencing the result of somebody else's jealousy, insecurity, or that sort of thing. So I'm really curious to hear if people... Someone's asking, what does 100% look like? I don't even know.
But that's a great point. Yeah, do we get pulled into our partner's previous patterns and relationships as well, right?
Yeah.
And have they found us for a reason? Are we going to play out that repetition? Are we one of their characters in that?
Yeah, so we could be the one putting the halt on things and impacting other people that we might have started relationships with, or we may be impacted by it. I've definitely talked about this with people, and it's hard when you're, when feelings have built up and then all of a sudden someone's put the brakes on things. It
can be difficult.
So some work. So that's number 2, build security in self.
Yeah.
So I mean, even if you're not feeling comfortable right now, it doesn't mean you can't do non-monogamy. I think it's just stuff that you need to work on. So number 3.
Yeah. Number 3 would be getting clarity. Right?
Yes, getting clarity on what you want and setting up a style of relationship that works for you.
Yeah, and you mentioned framework. What do you mean by that? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, a framework being sort of like the whole picture of what the relationship might work with. And that part of that ties into number 4. But the idea of knowing which style it is that that you want yourself, and then talking to your partners about that and making sure you're kind of on the same page. We gave the definitions of some of the broad categories of non-monogamy in relationships, but I think people often have different definitions.
Sure. And I imagine also that it's possible for people to have different styles with different people. So you may have a very kind of like monogamish kind of approach with your primary nesting partner, and then you may have friends with benefits on the side. You may do swing activities. So there's a whole bunch of different things. It needn't be exclusive or just one aspect, right? Yeah.
So the framework includes knowing it is what you want. And then, so I wanted to ask if you're willing to share, do you have a framework for the relationship that you've discussed with your partners?
Yeah.
I think it's important, because I think sometimes people just jump into it. I mean, we did. And I think we had to backtrack and figure out exactly what it is we wanted, how it was going to work, and all that stuff.
Yeah. That's a very interesting point too, right? So we might, imagine ourselves one way, might even make a proclamation, we are this or we are that. And that might be the snapshot of today, but it might be different than it was yesterday. It may change from tomorrow.
Yes.
And that's something that we're going to have to talk about as well. How do we talk about our situation? If it's something that we're wanting to maintain, or is it something we want to modify? Is it something we want to abandon? Is it something else going on? So how are we going to bring up those possibly difficult conversations? Because before we actually open the can of worms and talk about it, I might have just a lot of impressions or feelings about what I imagine you're going to say about how you're going to react, but I don't know until we actually talk about it.
Exactly.
So can we invite open and honest conversations? We certainly can. How are we going to do that? Well, we'll show you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a good segue into number 4, but I did want to mention, because you made me think of something as you were talking, is about part of discussing what style of relationships that you want, is having regular check-ins and making sure that you continue to be on the same page. Because like you said, your needs may change. You may want different things at different times. And so ongoing dialogue and communication. That's all I wanted to add. Okay, so number 4.
Fantastic. set up your value-based agreements.
Yes, values-based agreement. I think this is the thing that people struggle with the most.
You
I
think
think,
so? Yeah.
well, they may not know that they're struggling with it, but they may be having impacts on their relationships because they don't have values-based agreement. Because I think usually the tendency of us as humans is to want to protect ourselves and protect our relationships. So if you're opening up an existing relationship, you may set things more like rules to protect yourself and your relationship, what you won't do. So having that negative, you won't do this, you won't do that,
Oh, that's interesting. I wonder if we could look at the other side of that and see all the things that we are able to do, all that it allows for, all of the invitations that it implies.
Well, that's the basis of creating values-based agreements.
Right. So we're not focused simply on the restrictions or the negative aspect of it. We see also all of the benefits. And what are those so-called restrictions or agreements to do? Well, as you said, they're intended to make us feel secure, right? So they may speak to our feelings of vulnerability or need for protection.
Exactly. So when you set agreements based on what you value in your relationship, so it's an exercise of, and this is something we do in our program and with our clients, is determining what you value in your relationship. Yeah. And once you know what you value in your relationship, then you can set up the things that you will do, like you said, you will do and you will say to maintain that value in your relationship. And I think if that's the focus, then the other things sort of work themselves out, because you are protecting your relationships in that way, because you're upholding those values.
Sure. And if they are important to you and they've been discussed, then it is easier to communicate that with future partners. Right? So,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I feel better about it because I've already spoken to one set of partners about it. And then I feel because I'm familiar with it and confident in it, it's easier to share that information.
Yeah. And I think the sharing is super important because when we set up agreements, we should be ensuring that everybody is also consenting to it. So you and I make an agreement, and if I decide to have a relationship with somebody else, part of that is sharing what that agreement is, because they need to consent and be okay with it. So, this is, I don't want to go into the details of it, but like couples privilege and stuff like that, when people, people's agreements or rules impose on others.
Impose or might kind of, not liking the word dictate, but will help describe what type of relationship we have. So for example, we might have an agreement that we don't do sleepovers. Yeah. So we might tell that other person early on in the relationship to help manage their expectations. So they know and they can decide, okay, well, that's the type of relationship I can be with, or no, I'm really looking for a partner that will have these sleepovers. But it's the idea of first having the awareness of our own preferences, sharing it with our partners, and then sharing it with others. Exactly. Again, it always comes down to the communication.
So I'd love to know from you, do you have agreements with your partners that you've specifically discussed, or are you sort of winging it? I mean, I think we definitely winged it at the beginning.
Yeah, I wonder though, if part of me was wanting to kind of avoid it because I didn't have the language yet. I didn't have the secure knowledge that I could state my position and that it was in fact acceptable. And not only acceptable, but comes to find out, you were wanting it as well. So how we got into this is we were kind of just fooling around early on, and we were doing a rather complicated position. I said, it'd be great if I had another set of hands, kind of joking. I'll insert the idea a little bit. And you're like, yeah, that'd be great. And I was like, wow, really? Like, you'd like that? And you said, yeah, I think I might. And voila, we kind of stumbled into it. But we didn't really have the awareness of how to bring it up.
Yeah.
Whereas what we're suggesting is that we bring it up before, so we might find better matches. We might save ourselves a lot of toil and heartache.
Yeah, more exploring what it means to be this way. And I think we were pretty new to it. And it's like, you don't know what you don't know kind of thing until you get faced with an issue that makes you have to know.
Have some issues over the.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I mean, we were probably doing some couples privilege for sure. Somebody accused us of that.
Yeah, early on.
Very early on.
And we didn't even know what it meant.
No.
When she first said it, it was like, what is she talking about? And now looking back, I was like, absolutely.
Oh yeah, absolutely, 100%. Yeah. So.
Well, it's good. We had the willingness to talk openly about it.
Yeah.
Which is wonderful.
Yeah, awesome. So that was number 4, values-based agreement. And lastly, but not most importantly, I would say, which is the key to starting up and not sucking, maintaining
is what we always say from the very beginning: communication.
Yeah, learning how to communicate effectively, and then practicing, because it's not easy.
But everybody knows how to communicate effectively, don't they? Or so they think.
Well, they think so, but sometimes you can feel like, see, I wasn't doing that there. I just jumped in and
I'm so glad you did, because that's exactly what I was thinking about. You're thinking about listening, active listening.
Exactly.
See, I didn't have the awareness of that before we started this.
No.
I thought I was a very good listener, and then I found out, well, actually, maybe I'm not quite the listener I thought I was.
Yeah. No, exactly.
But it's a skill that we've helped hone with each other, and I think we're much better communicators today.
Yeah, and being able to communicate effectively is not only the key to feeling good in your relationship, but also resolving issues quickly. And and like I said, practice. Like even this weekend, I think we had to do like a redo on a few conversations, because I realized that we were just. I think when people start, I don't know if you've had this experience with people that you've worked with as well, is that you tend to, it's like these discussions fill the room and feel like they never ever get resolved. So, and it feels like you're constantly talking about it and not getting to the next thing. So the thing that we teach is attunement communication. So where you share openly, one thing at a time, and then actively listen and practice it. That's the key, practicing it.
One thing at a time. So we don't layer on all these other things. We try and go issue by issue, subject by subject.
Yeah, exactly. And then also part of it is not, once things are resolved, I think the other part of communicating effectively is not, bringing up old hurts or old things, and if you do have those things, like my clients, we were talking last week about, they have these jars on the shelf that they have these old hurts in. And when they feel triggered in things that are going on in the relationship, they open those jars and let them out. You know what I mean? So it's like, what are those things? So also part of learning how to communicate effectively is realizing if there's things that you haven't fully resolved that are sitting there on your shelf. So the other thing, were you going to say something?
No, I love your enthusiasm.
Well, it's interesting. I love when people have like can visualize things. And I like that idea of having hurts stored in jars, because it's Well,
we can compartmentalize it and put it away until we're able to address it again, right?
Yeah. So, but the point is you need to.
Well, yeah, you don't want to just leave it festering there and have it ferment and grow into a big resentment.
Yes.
We want to be able to talk about it. And you mentioned the idea that we kind of go to it sooner rather than later. So we're not just going to shelve it and never look at it. At one point, we're going to say, okay, you know what? Let's open up that bottle. Let's talk about what's going on here. How is it that we've spoken about this before and it's still not resolved? What are the elements of, like, how can we be more effective in dealing with this?
Yeah, I like what you've shared with me is the reason we sometimes keep these things is that they're serving some sort of purpose. Like, what purpose are they serving for you? And once you, I think, delve into that and understand it, you can better deal with it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because if it's serving a purpose, you may need to hang on to it, even if it's a perverse purpose. But once you are free of that, then you can let it go.
Yeah. So the other thing as part of communication is how much do you talk about? Because that's another thing that comes up for many people is like, how much do we share? How much do you share about your partners? Are you don't ask, don't tell? Are you sharing more than that?
Right.
How do you maintain the privacy of your partners as well? There's like so many different things that fall under this communication banner.
Well, this week, right, I was speaking to somebody online, and they wanted to verify that I was in an open relationship and not just one of the scoundrels who says that they're in an open relationship where their partner has no idea. So they actually wanted to verify it through a check-in with you. Quite interesting.
That's so interesting. I've heard. I'm happy to do it in that case because I understand this totally happens to people. What I haven't heard though of it happening in that direction where the person's dating wants to check. I mean, I guess I've heard of that, but I often hear people say that someone's partner wants to verify the person you're dating. So, for example, I decide I want to date this person X, and you say, well, before you date them, I have to check with them. I've heard of that. Not that you do that, but like I've heard that people do that. That gets into some like really sticky territory for me. of approval and autonomy and that sort of thing. So.
Right. But obviously, they're coming from a place, unfortunately, where their experience has brought them to this point where they do need to have this kind of verification because the situations in the past were not so open.
Yeah, so are we going to do it? I'm happy to talk to them. I'm actually really curious about their experiences.
Maybe the two of you will find that you like each other very much.
Well, I'm just curious that what kind of experiences brought them to this, because I think it'll inform what we do.
It may or may not. They may not be willing necessarily to share all that information with you.
Maybe not. But I think it's a thing that I've definitely heard this before from people they've experienced, that they've gone online and dated people only to find out that the other person they were in a relationship with someone else. They said that they were aware and they weren't. And while I get that, your relationship is your own, that other person can cause other problems. So if they're not aware and find out, you can get calls from them, which I experienced before I was non-monogamous, with somebody's wife calling me, which was horrible. We'd love to know on a scale of 0 to 5, where 0 is my communication sucks, to 5 where it's awesome. How would you rate your communication skills? How would you rate yours?
Do you mean communication with you or my other partners, or in general?
Well, whatever you wish to share.
Because I think also it depends on how receptive my partner is. You're very open to it, but I've had some partners where I found it a little bit more difficult to bring up certain subjects.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So even though I might consider myself to be a pretty good communicator, it's not always the case depending on who's across me. It might be a little bit more challenging.
Cool.
It's human.
It's human. So I'm like, am I a 4, 4.5 with you? Or anyway.
Should we do the frowny face, happy face?
Yeah. I think we're pretty happy face.
I think we communicate well. Not to say we don't have an issue. That's, again, human. But no, I think we're pretty good communicators. I think having developed this program, thank you, and it's because of you as well, but having developed this program, things like the awareness of how we communicate, the patterns of that, has increased the level of listening, which increases our communication style.
Yeah, because you can stop yourself and go, oh boy, look at me layering. You know what I mean? Even when you're having an emotional state, like you said to me this weekend, I think you might be layering, and it's totally true. So awareness really helps with changing breaking the pattern. I think that's the main thing.
So by layering, you mean you had one issue, but then you were bringing in issues that were unrelated to it, putting them on top, and creating this horrific, perfect storm.
Yeah, horrific.
Which also makes me think, what I'm going through this moment in time, is it based simply on my feelings? What facts do I have to support? Can I pull back enough to be objective and say, well, maybe it's not entirely accurate. Maybe the facts don't really support this. Maybe there's a lot of my own things going on that I brought into this. And then having that awareness can help me unpack some of that and say, you know what, actually at the end of it, maybe it's not as tragic as I imagined. Maybe it's not as horrific as I was feeling it.
It usually isn't.
It usually isn't.
Okay, so to recap, number 1 is determining your why. Number 2,
building your self-esteem and security in self.
Yep. Number 3 is getting clarity on what you want and setting up a framework for the relationship that works for you.
And 4 is setting up your value-based agreements. And of course,
number 5 is learning how to communicate effectively. Yeah. So no problem, right?
No problem.
No problem. You got this.
Easy squeezy.
Easy squeezy. If it's not feeling easy squeezy, we're super excited to share with you a special offer so that you can spend the season feeling secure, safe, happy, passionate, and have all the fun that an open relationship brings.
Yeah, it has been fun.
It has been fun. It's been fun. And if you have the right tools, it can be fun. And, I think sometimes people feel in pain. And I think, like you said, layering happens as we get closer to the holidays because we're dealing with family and other things and that sort of thing. So,
the work we're doing now will help influence what kind of new we're going to have.
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely. Yeah, get a jump start by participating in our open relationship startup program. So this is 3 hours of coaching directly with us, so one-on-one or with your partner. We have customized tools and resources that will help you work through the things that we discuss in our sessions, and then additional supports from us to ensure that you get started successfully.
Awesome.
Yeah. We don't want to leave you hanging.
Where were we when we were new or struggling?
Oh, man. I don't know. Where were we?
Well, I guess we thought we could do it on our own.
Yeah.
But it would have saved us a lot of heartache fighting, name calling.
Name calling?
Police calling? No, not yet. Not
Yes.
yet.
So if you're interested in open relationship startups, send us a message. Happy to share with you what it's all about. What's interesting about this is it's a bite-sized piece of our bigger program. So if you do the startup program and you want to continue, you can easily jump into our group program. We'll slide you right in. So, and yeah, let us know if you have any questions and comments.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
If you want to explore polyamory, open up a relationship, or try your hand at swinging, we can help. Check out our website at taranandre.com for information on our Poly Newbies digital course or our deeper dive open relationship and polyamory mastery program where you get direct coaching from us. There's also other individual and couples coaching options there as well. Thanks for listening to the Let's Talk Polyamory podcast with TNA. Don't forget to subscribe and give us some love on your favorite podcasting platform. You can check out the show notes for any of the links to the courses or information we talked about today. Thanks and have a fantastic and sexy day.